This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so we've got the recording going. So Carrie, I think we're good to go, yes?
Yes, I think it would be great if we can just get started. I was going to say anyone that's not on video, if you could just say your name so we know everyone that's here.
And so I think it would
Mark Clough.
Yep, Mark Clough and
Dan MacArthur.
Okay. Dan, did you switch from computer to phone?
Yes, I completely lost the computer, so I'm just now.
Okay.
Okay, can I just verify whether Tara Sweet is here?
She just arrived.
Okay. Nancy Russell?
I see her.
You see Nancy?
I do in the list of attendees.
I am here. This is Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy.
Sorry, I'm zooming from one meeting to the next.
Yes, we know how it is. And is Mark Nielsen here? Mark Nielsen indicated he might be able to listen, but I'm not sure that he can participate, so I don't think he's here. All right, I think I've got everyone then. Go ahead, Neil.
Yep, so actually I'm just going to call the meeting to order, and then I do want to turn it over to Sue and Kim for a little background on the PPP and why we've called everybody together today.
Sure, I can get started with that, and then I'll hand it over to Kim. Attached to the agenda in your board packet, you have a memo that outlines the process for submission of the PPP application. And that memo also includes a link to VEDA's information, Vermont Economic Development Authority, information about the program. Also in your board packet, we included the completed application form, the verification of approval, most recent profit and loss statement as of March, calculation worksheet, and application checklist. That included all the documentation that we needed to submit to VEDA. And just some background on the PPP, Paycheck Protection Program. It's a federal program that provides funds for small businesses in the form of loans, which can be forgiven when used for payroll costs, interest on mortgages, rent, and utilities. As a 501c3 and nonprofit, VSBA is an eligible entity to apply for the PPP. The interest rate on any amount not forgiven is a 1% fixed rate. There are no fees associated with the PPP loans, and the term of the loan is 2 years. No payments are due for the first 6 months, but you can make payments during that time period. There are no prepayment penalties or fees. So with that, I will turn it over to Kim to give you some information on any anticipated effects of COVID-19 on VSBA revenues and expenses.
This is Mark. I might just
Yes.
add, because I've done 140 of these, you'll also have the forgiveness piece where 75% of the loan will get forgiven if you provide your payroll records and show that you employed your employees. And then it's only the remaining amount that has to be repaid. And it's interest only for 18 months.
Right, and that information is included on the calculation worksheet that was in your packet. Thank you, Mark.
I think the forgiveness piece is something you should verbalize, though, because 75% of this note will go away.
Right, correct, yes. Thank you for adding that in there.
Thank you. And it in that way, that piece of it is almost like a grant, if you will. But Carrie, I'm wondering, can we do the screen share on the P&L? Because I want to just spend a minute to just indicate we met as a finance committee twice on this topic. And the first time they had just run out of money the first round. So we spent very little time and frankly talking about the PPP. thinking that there was really no opportunity to pursue that. But we did spend a little bit of time thinking about some concerns around our revenue stream or potential risk to our revenue given the COVID situation. We raised questions to include what about applying for a line of credit, if that was something to at least look into. We certainly have restricted reserves in the amount of about, our bylaws, I think, put us in the 4 to 6 month range. And I believe we're holding that at about 5 months right now. But we were really raising questions in our first meeting and kind of set aside PPP. When the second round reopened, we revisited the conversation, Neil and Sue and I, and then again with the full finance committee, we had gathered more information. Sue had and Carrie on the line of credit options, which were not especially favorable, nor was our bank even in doing that business right now because they were overwhelmed with the business from the PPP. And Sue had found additional information in her work reaching out to VITA. So we had more information to consider, and we reconvened as a group to discuss whether or not we move forward. It was the recommendation of the majority out of the group to the executive committee, which was the sort of process that needed to happen. The executive committee had to approve even the application for the loan. In that conversation, we addressed the opportunity to consider, with our very lean staff, we're certainly not at risk of having to let people go. But if our revenue sources dry up, our services dry up, it's a pretty substantial downward spiral, and we would have to consider those options moving forward. And thinking about the members whom we serve, we really wanted to know if there was something we could or should be doing that allowed us to consider what we do about dues for next year and how we can best support through our services or perhaps some modification to our dues if we were to receive the loan. So the recommendation of the majority out of the finance committee was to advance the application for the loan. The executive committee approved that. The turnaround was really quick, and so thank you all for being able to meet at a special meeting today, because we had anticipated maybe we would be looking at this at our next full meeting. But the full board needs to approve the acceptance of the loan, and that needed to happen in a tighter turnaround than our next meeting. After we received this, we chatted again, Sue, Carrie, and I, to really take a closer look at the areas where we have some concern regarding our revenue stream for the coming year. And we've got the screen up in front of us, thank you, Carrie, to take a look at our income and expenses. And the most obvious, I think, that would come to mind for everyone immediately is the annual conference, which is typically budgeted to have a net income for us of $10,000. It is really questionable whether or not we're going to be able to gather in that same way. And if we are able to have it, it's likely to look pretty different. And if we were going to try to offer it remotely, Sue has had regular meetings with the National School Boards Association, and they're looking to vet platforms that might do that, and they're quite expensive as a service. So as they're looking at those options. So we are acknowledging that that is going to be an area that is going to be difficult. If we don't mind going back up to, I don't have control of this, do I? Thank you, Carrie. Like, I'm moving my screen, but nothing's happening.
No, you don't. That's all right. Just tell me what you want me to do.
That's okay. I was just going to go back up as we had talked through this together, the three of us, and can't remember if Neil had joined us on that conversation as well, but we looked a little bit more closely. And in addition to the conference, we recognize board development is not going to be a priority probably for our boards in this moment. We are, all of us as board members, doing our best to support our administration, our communities, our families, but the reflective practice of board development is probably not at the front of our priority list right now. And recognizing that that has a revenue or a net income after expenses of about $15,000. So we imagine that to be likely a revenue that's at risk. Public policy is our collaborative with our partners, and not all of our partners are eligible for the PPP. Those that are in the process of applying or have been already received theirs, but we need to recognize that we may have either unequal participation from partners, depending on what people can do. We want that service to continue, and it may be at a greater expense for those that remain part of the collaborative. So we just recognize that that is a potential where we are having a larger part in it, and the expenses remaining the same. Our piece of it is bigger. Our whatever I might be talking backwards around it, and I apologize if I am, Sue, but we're just acknowledging that we may be in that partnership with fewer people. It may generate less income. It may, depending on the services we try to continue to provide in that, those expenses remain the same. We have been the source of that, so it generates some income for us. And if we have fewer partners, it will generate less income. Those were some obvious line items there. We do imagine that travel-related expenses will go down. And I think that what we otherwise imagined we might be able to do with the funds received from this program is figure out how best to support our members. So is that in some proportional forgiveness around dues? I think we were recognizing that as this comes in, we certainly keep track of all of our eligible expenses for the 8-week period. And we determined then, how do we apply this hopefully forgivable loan? Every indication seems to be that we know the formula of what should be forgivable. We recognize there's not firm guidance or policy just yet, so we're going on the best information we have. With 2 years to pay back a 1% loan, it seems to be a reasonable risk to take for the potential that 3/4 of this doesn't need to be repaid and could go directly to our members, however we think is best to apply that by the time we have more clarity. And I think depending on what happens around education financing in the state, it will know better what is most helpful to our members and make that determination as we're going through the budget process for the coming year. Are there any questions? And please, Finance Committee or Executive Committee, whatever I've left out, please jump in and share. We were not unanimous, and I want to acknowledge and appreciate the sort of internal struggle with, wait, are we among the most needy in this situation in applying for the PPP? And are we in competition with those whom we're trying to serve? And our school districts are not eligible to apply for this. We have an opportunity to, in our responsibilities to our members, do well by receiving these forgivable loans and turning those around to benefit our members. So, but we certainly acknowledged that, is this really intended for us? And came around to, this is an opportunity that we thought we had to pursue in the majority to see how to best serve our members with those resources. Okay. Any questions and any additional input from the Finance Committee or the Executive Committee?
Yeah, let me first ask if there's any member of either the executive committee or the finance committee that wants to add to what Kim has, the information that Kim has provided. Seeing none, are there board members with questions?
The only comment I'd make is that the rules around forgiveness are going to get more liberalized because what was put into place was really thrown together too quickly, and there's nobody at fault for that. And so there's going to be a lot more leeway in how you get this forgiven. So I don't think there needs to be a lot of angst around that.
Thank
The guidance
you.
is going to come out by the 15th of May.
Sorry, just to be clear, that was
VSBA
Mark
said.
speaking, correct?
Yes.
Thanks, Mark. Even in whatever
any other?
angst we might have had, I think we allayed that to some extent to know the time frame we had to make a no penalty prepayment or whatever it is we might need to do. I think we won't know how to best use this money until more is known about what's happening with our members and the financing situation for education. So, but thank you, Mark.
Any other board member questions? Dan, go ahead. You're muted though, Dan. You're still muted, Dan.
Is there a motion on the table? If not, I would like to make one.
There is not a motion on the table, but there is a motion, and it's very particular, that is in the packet for the board meeting. So
I'd
if
like to
you
move
have that.
motion.
Could we read the motion?
Do you have it with you, Dan, or not?
I don't right here.
I think I can read it.
Okay, Kim, if you can, why don't you go ahead?
Yes. Resolved that the Vermont School Boards Association shall secure financing from the Vermont 504 Corporation in the principal amount of $79,862 as evidenced by a promissory note in the original principal amount of $79,862 to be dated of near date herewith.
All right,
Do I read both? Both?
Right, let's do them one at a time.
Okay.
And so Jim Salzgiver, I believe, had a second.
Yep.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Neil, I don't want to be too nitpicky, but as a board, school board, it was suggested that we take all votes by roll call vote rather than just 8 yeas and nays. Has to comply with that same kind of.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
We had a meeting
So,
the other day and it came up that if a vote is unanimous, then you don't necessarily need to do roll call. That was the role that people understood. If it's not, then you need to do roll call.
Right, that's correct.
and I
But I
will
don't
let
think it was unanimous.
Sue correct me here, though, because we are not a public body, so we don't need to adhere to the same regulations, I believe, Sue.
You don't need to, but you could certainly go ahead and do it. That would be fine.
Okay.
Best practice problem.
That we do, yeah. And is it something that can Carrie read the roll? I don't know who is, or can you just see everybody, Neil, and run through it? I don't know.
I can see everybody according to the attendee list that I've got here in the go-to meeting. And so I could
Why
certainly
don't you do it that way, Neil? And then if you miss anyone, we can ask.
Or we could
Okay.
vote by chat too, or, you know.
Well, let me just do this quickly and let's see how this works. And if it's a complete and utter failure, we'll go to method number 2. Adrian,
Aye. Sorry.
Amy,
Aye.
caller one I believe is Mark.
Which Mark?
Mark Clough.
I'm an aye.
Thank you. Clarence. Clarence.
Maybe thumbs up, thumbs down.
Clarence, can you hear me for the vote? Clarence is a yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Got a visual account of that.
Clarence, you're on twice, just so you know.
Dan MacArthur.
Aye.
David Chandler.
Aye.
Don Collins.
Aye.
Heather Gagne.
Yes, and aye, yes.
That was a no for Heather. Jim Salzgiver.
Aye.
Kevin Hansen.
Aye.
Kim Gleason.
Aye.
Lori Childers.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, good. Yes, aye.
Thank you. Mark Shelber.
Aye.
Nancy.
Aye.
And Tara.
Aye.
Did I miss anyone? Okay. Kim, if you wouldn't mind with the second motion, since you did such a great job on the first one.
Sure. Resolved that Sue N. Siglowski be and she is hereby duly authorized to execute and deliver to the Vermont 504 Corporation in connection with the note any and all documents required of the company to consummate said transaction.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mark Schauber. Any further discussion?
Was the motion by Kim and the second by Mark?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no further discussion, then I'll go to Adrian.
Sorry, I wasn't anticipating. Aye.
Amy.
Aye.
Mark Clough. I think you're muted, Mark. Can you hear me, Mark? Mark Clough, you're up for a vote. I will come back to Mark in a second. Clarence. Clarence, we're not hearing anybody's got a thumbs up. We've got visual
giving a
confirmation
thumbs
of that. Okay. Dan MacArthur.
Aye.
David Chandler.
Aye.
Don Collins.
Aye.
Heather Gagne.
No.
Jim Salzgiver.
Aye.
Kevin Hansen.
Aye.
Kim Gleason.
Aye.
Lori Childers.
Aye.
Mark Schauber.
Aye.
Nancy.
Aye.
And Tara.
Aye.
And Mark Clough, are you with us yet? We'll go back to you for a vote. You're still showing as muted on the GoToMeeting. Mark? Are you there, Mark?
Yes, I am.
Okay, your vote on the second motion?
Actually, I'm just barely dialing in, so.
You've got the other Mark, Neil. That's Mark Nielsen that just responded, not Mark Clough.
Okay. Mark Clough, are you with us though still?
I believe I am. I'm on the phone.
Okay, then I just need your vote for the second motion.
Right. I'm an aye.
Okay, perfect. And Mark Nielsen, we are just finishing up voting on the second motion, which is the second resolution that was in the packet.
Okay, I'll get that stuff up and I'll follow along from here. I'm still working as well, so.
Okay, so I think probably by the time you get it up, we're probably going to be done, because that was we just had taken all of the votes on that second motion. I can hold on for just 1 second if you want to weigh in on it, or.
If it helps, the first that we voted on and approved was to approve the acceptance of the loan, and the second was to approve Sue to be the signatory for that, essentially. And that second vote is the one we're just wrapping up.
No, that's fine on my end. Go ahead and I'll be listening in and participating where I can from here.
Okay, so we're actually just wrapping things up, because that was the second motion and that was the only other item left. Yep,
I think if it's okay, Neil, I just wanted to say thank you so much to Sue and Carrie. It was no small undertaking to gather all that was necessary to get through the application process. And thank you so much to the Finance Committee for the time and experience that everybody was able to bring to the conversation and the diverse thoughts on the process. And really, it was rich. I learned a lot through it. And I think our next turn on this will be to determine how best to use the resources as we approach budget over the summer for the coming months, and really seeing what good can come of the receipt of these funds for our members. But thank you. I know this was a big lift. I'm grateful.
Thank you, Kim. Yep, thanks. I echo that. Thanks to everyone that was involved in the process. I certainly appreciated hearing the various points of view on all of this as we moved through the process to approve this.
Neil, this is Lori Childers.
No other. Yes. Go ahead.
I think I heard something and maybe I just misunderstood.
I think you just muted yourself by accident, maybe.
I'm sorry, I did. Are the PPP loans up to 100% forgivable? Is that a correct statement? I thought I heard earlier in the conversation somebody said something about 75%, and I just wanted to make sure I was not misunderstanding.
Should Jim Salzgiver, I did one of the PPP loans for another organization. My understanding, and from the documentation, is yes, they are forgivable up to 100%, but basically the date of your closing on the loan, you have the next 8 weeks to determine, what are your what are the expenses, which are mostly payroll, but can also include rent and utilities. What are your expenses over that next 8 weeks? Determine the amount that you can actually apply for forgiveness. The 75% is that at least 75% has to be payroll.
Jim, I just have to say, having gone through the guidance quite a bit, only 75% of the loan is forgivable. That's the payroll piece. 25% of the remaining funds, up to 25%, will be forgivable. That's the first guidance that's come out. That may be changing, but it's a nuance, but it's not 100%.
Well,
but none of this is written in stone because there is no policy or written from the Department of Treasury.
Well, that's not true. There is guidance out there, but there's all kinds of legislative bodies pushing back on it, and so I think it's going to change.
There is guidance, but there is nothing that has been in writing that has been delivered by the Treasury.
No, that's not true either. We've got all the documents from the Treasury on the initial guidance, but I do think it's going to change quite a bit. I can forward that stuff to you if you want.
Oh, I have all of it.
I think
Okay.
part of what helped us to get through that challenge, which I think is real, like, you know, it's hard to trust anything that you can't touch and see and feel, was to recognize that even if we were to be in a position to need to repay it, the timeline, the 1%, the no prepayment penalty, the clarity that comes with literally every passing day in terms of the needs of our membership and how we would end up applying that, or what we know about whether or not there'll be a conference or a revenue stream, or all of that comes in time. I'm grateful to imagine that there'd be more clarity and more in writing and more to hang our hats on, and still also feel, as I think the majority of our group has, that moving forward with it with what we know still leaves us and our members in a better position than not pursuing these available resources. So I think any avenue of additional clarity or documentation in writing. We received some information from Vita as well around how to calculate what we could anticipate for forgivable, and we will be tracking very carefully the eligible expenses from the time of receipt, and making sure that our salary payments are happening in a normal stream during that period of time, that we don't barely just miss one or something to that effect. So we've calculated based on the best guidance we had. We've anticipated based on the best guidance that Vita could give us what we imagine might be forgivable, and we'll be tracking all the expenses that happen, especially for those 8 months that 8 weeks, I'm sorry, that follow the receipt of the loan. So, but certainly, I think, was it Mark? Anybody who's got additional documentation that you'd like to share with Sue and Carrie, and they can pass along to me or others as it seems appropriate, or share with us for our full board meeting coming up, our regular board meeting coming up, that will be welcomed. I know that there had been much pushback on the timeline for businesses who may be getting the loan and not able to reopen yet. And that timeline, I think, had tremendous concern. That really isn't our issue, but it is a real issue. And I'm hoping that's an area they find more flexibility for small business owners.
I would just say, having talking to a lot of borrowers about this, that's good rationale, and that's the way to look at this. I think that's a reasonable way to look at this. Mark Clough.
Thanks, Mark. Sue, can I propose that we just, for the next few meetings, that we have this sort of as a standing agenda item to address how we've handled the funds from the approval, and just a readout to the board to make sure that things are going as anticipated, or if anything comes up along the way, that we have the proper opportunity to react to it as well.
Yes, would you like it on the agenda for next Wednesday?
I think we should, yeah. I understand that maybe there's not a whole lot that will happen between now and then, but I think it's a good practice just to make sure that the board is kept informed about the funds and the usage and any prepayment or payment items associated with it.
Okay, I will add it to the agenda for next week and for the June and July meeting, or we don't meet in July, but in the June meeting.
Yep, thank you.
And the finance committee will meet in July, actually. So obviously, we'll get further detail and update at that point as well.
Okay. So if there are no other items, certainly are no other items on the agenda, I want to say thank you so much to board members. This is a great turnout for 2 o'clock on a Friday. I know it's the middle of the workday for most folks, so I greatly appreciate your flexibility in getting together to meet the needs of the organization. I look forward to seeing all of you next Wednesday evening, and I hope that everyone is doing well, that you're staying healthy, that your boards are continuing to function well, and that you have a great chilly weekend. With that, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
You all really just want to hang out a little bit while longer on a Friday afternoon, huh?
Remember
is
when you give
Nancy.
motions.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Nancy, was that Nancy you said?
it
Yes.
was.
Okay. Just a reminder whenever I make motions to give your name. Thank you.
I'll second
Second from
Kim Gleason.
Kim.
And I'll add Happy Mother's Day, moms out there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Thank you all.
All
Thanks.
right. With that, we will adjourn, folks. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, Dan.